Good morning again, everyone, and welcome again to the World Economic Forum Driving Innovation Forward series to discuss the Global Economic Report. This morning, I would first like to acknowledge and welcome our distinguished guest, starting with the Senator, the Honorable Dr. Bo Tiwari, Minister of Planning and Development, our panelist, Mr. Rabindra Jagannath, President of TTCSI, Mr. Francis Lewis, Vice Chairman of CCI, Dr. Graham King, Lecturer in the Department of Manufacturing and Mechanical Engineering, and Mr. Nicholas Lockjack, President of the TTMA. This morning, my responsibility is to set the tone for this morning's discussion. So, basically, having only been informed of this 24 hours ago, and having to read through the entire report last night, I will try to do my best on this. Interestingly enough, the report comes at an interesting time. The increasing turbulence, both from a socioeconomic perspective, leaves us really wondering where do we position ourselves as a country in today's competitive environment. When we look at the data that is associated with the report and where we're positioned at position 92, and the challenges we face specifically with regards to crime, work ethic, and at times the bureaucracy, one has to begin to ask yourself the question, how does one move forward to move from a position of 92 or anywhere else up that ladder? And there's some interesting thoughts on that came out of the report. One of the things that struck me was the fact that we were classified as innovation-driven. And my question to myself was, how do we move from innovation-driven to driving innovation? And for me, what I thought was that it starts with a thinking first. So we have to stop talking about wanting to be innovative and start thinking and moving towards that innovation. And that requires a complete shift in thinking, not just in terms of simply thinking about the infrastructure or the human capital development or the other socioeconomic indicators that allow us to do so, but to really start thinking deeply as a nation and from an economic perspective as to what it means to be a competitive society. It is a huge challenge, one that we're resilient enough to overcome, and I think that basically we should not look at the fact that we're 92 on this ranking and that Sweden is number 1, but we should be facing the challenge from the perspective of what do we do to move up from where we are. Because if you look at the indices carefully, you see there are many things that we have done pretty well at. So it's not a situation of the glass being half full anymore or half empty. It's a situation of basically moving forward and improving on the things we're already doing pretty okay and repairing the things that we're not. So as part of my responsibility, I have to introduce the feature speaker, which is Senator the Honorable Dr. Bo Tiwari, and I would like to welcome him to the stage. He is the Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development, whose remit is partly that of competitiveness of our country. So I would now like to take the opportunity to welcome this Senator Honorable Bo Tiwari to the stage to give the keynote address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to each and every one of you. My salutations to the panelists here this morning, Mr. Rabindra Jagannath, President of TTCSI, Mr. Francis Lewis, Vice Chairman of the Council for Competitiveness and Innovation, Dr. Graham King, Lecturer in the Department of Manufacturing and Mechanical Engineering, UWI, and Mr. Nicholas Lockjack, President of the TTMA. Good morning to all of you who are here present, and I want to thank the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business for inviting me here to speak this morning. The first thing I want to say is that this report was done some time ago And I had the opportunity to speak to the issues when the report first came out. And we are now in the cycle where the work is being done to prepare what would be the next report related to competitiveness across the global system, and which would include Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the assessment of competitiveness is done on the basis of two things. One is the data that is available in a country, whether that data is available locally or whether it is derived from international sources. So the first thing is the database and the currency of the database and the significance of the database that is tapped by those who are doing the competitiveness rankings. And the second part of it is a survey done across each country. So in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, a survey will be done here. And a lot depends on how perceptions translate into the filling out of the questions on that questionnaire in the survey. So the opinions of people in the country about what is happening as reflected through their perception of life and work and competitiveness and development in their own country is important. So I think a lot has to do with perception, but a lot has to do also with disposition and attitude about what is happening in the country, because that survey does in fact reflect on the ultimate results that are distributed in the world. So if a person is in a bad mood and fills out the survey, it does not do the country very well. If a person is in a very skeptical mood on the morning that he or she fills it out, that will not help us very much. But if a person is in a positive mood on the morning or afternoon that he or she fills it out, it does make a difference. And therefore the human element and the disposition element is also important. I want to say too, the number of people who fill out the forms is also important. A lot of us get things every day. I get things on my email all the time. People send me things, they ask me things on their telephone. And many times we are not disposed to really fill in these things out because they take time, and time is at a premium. But this is very, very important, this survey. And therefore, if you have received one of the instruments, the survey instruments, I hope that you will take the time and have a good disposition to realistically and accurately fill out the form. Now, according to the Global Competitiveness Report, a skills and innovation gap is inhibiting Latin America's productivity potential, so that there is a skills and innovation gap, and that makes a difference in productivity. In general, after a few years of general improvement, the current Global Competitiveness Report shows that most countries are stagnating in their competitiveness performance. These results, that is to say the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, these results point to a certain exhaustion of the traditional sources of competitiveness gains utilized by several countries in the past years. These gains were based on sound macroeconomic management, improvements in credit conditions, and in certain cases, better functioning of the goods, labor, and financial markets. As far as Trinidad and Tobago is concerned, according to the 2012-13 Global Competitiveness Report, Trinidad and Tobago, as you heard from the chairman, ranked 92 out of 148 countries, and in fact dropped 8 points on the year before. The Global Competitiveness Index is a comprehensive tool that measures the micro and macro components of national competitiveness, which are grouped into 12 pillars of competitiveness. The index utilizes both a ranking and a score to determine the competitiveness of a country. So since the methodology is the same for all countries, that establishes the basis of comparison. In 2013, Trinidad and Tobago has moved from being an efficiency-driven economy and is now classified by the GCR as an innovation-driven economy. The next stage of development is the movement to a knowledge-based society where human imagination and interaction are of paramount importance. I want to share a quote with you. An innovation-driven economy is a country that has the ability to produce innovative products and services at the global technology frontier using the most advanced methods, which then becomes the dominant source of competitive advantage. An innovation-driven economy is characterized by distinctive producers and a high share of services in the economy, and is quite resilient to external shocks. What this means, therefore, is that not only do we need to be productive, we also need to move our production base up the value chain, and we also need to evolve in terms of both the absorption and use and deployment of technology. The index has shown that Trinidad and Tobago has weaknesses in certain areas, and I will mention what they are. We have weaknesses in institutions where we ranked 94. We have weaknesses in technology readiness where we ranked 61. We have weaknesses in labor market efficiency where we ranked 89. We have weaknesses in goods market efficiency where we ranked 101. As well as we also have weaknesses in innovation and sophistication where we ranked 92. I want to make this point too because it is important, because we are a small country. China has 1.3 billion people, and it is a large country with a large market, with a large production base and a large human capital base. Trinidad and Tobago has 1.3 million people. So you can figure out the mathematics, the ratio. So the question does arise, does small size make a difference in competitiveness? And I will not answer the question yes or no, but I will simply use this as an illustration. In the case of Singapore, geographical size has not limited the ability of Singapore to achieve high GCI rankings. And Singapore is a little bigger than Tobago and about one-third the size of Trinidad and Tobago. Size has also not limited the ability of Luxembourg to achieve high rankings in the GCI. What is perhaps more important though, what is perhaps more pertinent, is proximity to larger or more developed markets, which has proven to be quite quite significant in the case of both Luxembourg in Europe and Singapore in the Far East. Now, Trinidad and Tobago does have that opportunity because of the US market, because of the Canadian market, and because of our traditional involvement with Europe, and because of the EPA arrangements that we have made with Europe. But the truth is that the world is changing and it is shifting. And what is happening today as global trade in goods and services falls, as growth becomes elusive and is less comparatively than it was, let's say, 2 decades ago on a global scale. What this means, and we are seeing it all over the world in terms of an emerging pattern, is that countries are focusing more and more on what is being described as the neighborhood. Countries are focusing on trade, investment, and development strategies that are linked to the countries that are close to them. And that is why we have been taking the necessary steps to increase trade with the countries around us traditionally. In a significant way, the CARICOM market has become a limited market for us because in a major way, we have been able to capitalize on the CARICOM market and by and large dominate the market. But in the countries around us in Central and South America, we have not been engaged in the way really that we should have. And a lot of what we are doing today is meant to open up relations with those markets so that we can develop capacity to be able to deal not only in trade expansion, but also in joint venture arrangements, and together with that, build not only market space, but competitive capacity for the country's companies in relation to the rest of the region. Now, the top 10 innovative countries in the world have tended to focus on 4 key areas. 1, promoting industry and academic linkages. 2, promoting research and development and innovation programs. 3, supporting small and medium enterprises for innovation. And 4, developing the building blocks for innovation. Specifically, emphasis has been placed on creating an environment that is conducive to innovation. And this involves, for instance, promoting industry and academia linkage through companies promoting commercialization in the universities, increasing the number of industrial PhDs carried out in cooperation between a university and firms. That is to say, doing the PhD work in such a way that it is de-linked from academia only and involves specific work in companies as well. So you link the knowledge side to the experience and practical side. 3, establishing innovation funds backed by the private sector to promote entrepreneurship education, technology incubators, entrepreneurs in residence, and other programs in the universities. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have done some of that. We established an innovation fund in 2011. It did not work because we did not get off the ground fast enough, because we did not have the institutions to do it. But in 2011, we established the Council for Competitiveness and Innovation. And that was something to which a commitment had been made in 2010, but again, that did not get off the ground until 2011, and it was a new institution. But that institution was able to work with other collaborators, such as Kariri, which is an older institution, and begin the process of inviting people with good ideas that were innovation-driven and that could have commercial possibilities. And based on successful attempts in 2012 and 2013, 103 projects have now been funded, 23 of them in the creative sectors, and about 30% of them now being on the way to sustainable success so far. And we are in a situation where, as Kariri has engaged and become very, very aware and alert to what is required, they have established the Center for Enterprise Development, which is an incubation facility, business development facility, ICT-focused creative facility for entrepreneurship development, and also an advisory services for small businesses to begin the process of growing, not just as a company in Trinidad and Tobago, but growing their markets abroad to help them to grow. Another area is the promotion of R&D activities. These are some of the areas that you have to focus on if you want to develop your competitive capacity. This has been done by providing direct funding to national entities, universities, to conduct research innovation programs, developing specific clusters and conducting R&D in areas of national importance has emerged as a major trend. What we have done is that we have identified, together with the private sector, 7 clusters. Energy and energy-related services, building on our traditional strength, is one. But we have other areas on which we are now focused that are part of the medium-term development program. And those include tourism, they include finance, they include maritime services, they include food sustainability, they include ICT, and they include the creative industries. And in terms of providing funding, one of the things that we've been doing in terms of Kariri and the Center for Enterprise Development is that we've entered into a collaborative relationship with the Research Institute of Jamaica, and together they have won a grant from the World Bank of $3.5 million US, and the focus of that grant is the promotion of businesses that will provide solutions to challenges in climate change. So that is a specific area of focus for entrepreneurial development. The other things that countries do is to provide tax credits. Governments have been proactive in encouraging tax credits to businesses that are involved in R&D, innovative activities. This has proven to be highly beneficial for the small and medium enterprises in many countries. Tax credits of this kind do exist in Trinidad and Tobago. And they exist for research, and they exist also for market research. We have a booklet of incentives for businesses in this country. And whenever we speak to businesses, they say that the problem in Trinidad and Tobago is not incentives. They have enough incentives to do well. That the big problem in Trinidad and Tobago is really the bureaucratic framework that inhibits the process of business development and speed in business activities in the country. So those are some of the areas that countries usually focus on, and we are trying to do them. Industry and academic linkages. I talked about Kariri, the research from the University of the West Indies, and the eye-to-eye issue. The promotion of R&D activities, I talked about that, the incentives and tax credit. Now, the Sustainable Development Agenda. In the top innovating countries, research and development activities and the innovative programs are trending towards areas related to sustainable development. In this regard, areas such as clean environment, energy, climate change, creating sustainable cities have been paid special attention via direct funding and tax credits. Now, this is an important issue because there is a philosophical issue here and a practical question to be asked. Is sustainable development possible without innovation? I think when you think about it, even without considering it too deeply, your answer will be no, it's not possible. If you want to have sustainable development, you need to have innovation. And if we are thinking about sustainable development of our country, and what does sustainable development mean? It means a focus on economic growth and prosperity in balance with consideration for the environment and the ecological framework within which you operate, and also respect and appreciation for socio-cultural habits and patterns and the extent to which development will cause these to change and to evolve and to integrate into the development agenda of a country and, in particular cases, a community. So it's the balance between the economic